In our last episode, we discussed DVC hotel options for our next trip. Today, we're exploring moderate and value Disney resorts that fit our family's needs.
Welcome to Always Planning Disney, where planning is half the fun. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Cheryl.
And on this channel, we talk through all of the details that go into making our vacations magical.
What are your top factors for choosing a resort? We talked through those a little bit with DVC, but let's just remind ourselves as we go into these other Disney resorts.
Yeah, our number one factor is price. That is what carries the most weight when we have been using the decision-making matrix that calculates all of this for me. So price is a big one. After that, we're looking for resort activities and an upgraded pool experience. Having stayed at Pop Century for a while now, which works great for us because we tend to hit the parks all day, we know we're looking for downtime. So we need a resort that's going to give us a little bit more to do there and a nicer pool experience. Those are our top two. After that, also looking for multiple modes of transportation because we just like it. I would love to be able to walk from my resort to a park. That's even better than having to, like a Skyliner and a bus or a boat and a bus. Being able to walk to a park, awesome, especially at park close. Don't have to wait on the transportation at all. Those are really our big ones. What about you? What are you weighing?
Yeah, that's kind of a big ditto for me. So cost is definitely our number one factor as well, and sort of what sort of value are we getting for our money? So not necessarily the cheapest option, but making sure that it's a good value resort. Park transportation, that's where we'd really like to make an upgrade because we've always had bus only resorts. And so like you, we would love to be able to walk or just have some sort of an option. Walking, of course, isn't going to be an option with the resorts that we're considering today because there aren't any moderate or value resorts that we can walk to a park from. So that already knocks them down a notch. And then we're also looking for a nice pool for my dad and for my will-be 5-year-old on that trip.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you are paying attention to the age of your child because as I was looking at properties, I've been planning with my kids being the age they are now, and will not be 5 or 6 on the next trip. He will be older, and so I probably don't have to consider the little kid pool so much anymore. But he's not a thrill seeker, and he's probably not going to turn into one over the next year. So we still need a pool with like a calm area where nothing's like splashing at you, and then something a bit more exciting in a slide because my oldest is a daredevil. So it was quite an awakening when I realized how old my kids would be on this next trip, and it changes some of those things that I've been looking at.
It does change things. So last trip, we really wanted to have a 2-bedroom villa that had a living room space so we could shut off the bedroom since we were coming back for nap time. And this trip, that's not an essential. That's a nice to have for us. So that's why we're even able to be looking at moderate and value resorts this trip, is because we could have a more traditional hotel room setup and still be okay. It's not ideal just because he's still probably going to go to bed a little earlier than the grown-ups, but it would be okay. We could get away with a regular hotel room this time. So with your priorities and the age of your kiddos in mind, what are you considering? Which resorts are you considering for this next trip?
Yes, so we looking at value and moderate because price is such an important factor. We're not going to be able to do anything above a moderate. So we're looking at the value resorts, which we've stayed at Pop Century many times, and we'd like to try something different. We've stayed at Art of Animation before, and so really I focused more on the moderate resorts. And then I realized something, which is a lot of the moderate resorts may not be our thing or really fit our needs. So when I was looking at that list of moderates, some of the things I realized, Caribbean Beach, which was always top of our hypothetical list for moderates because I like a beach theme. It's affordable. It has a cool looking pool. Why not? But on our last trip, we visited the resort and like a moment of pause we took the Skyliner over there, and it's way too big. It is gigantic. And we ran into this at Art of Animation, which if you stay in the Little Mermaid room, it's really far away from transportation and from dining. And I love walking around Disney, but the parks I don't really like walking around a resort and having that big walk in the morning and end of day, or even if you just want to go and like get something to eat real quick, you're so far away. So Caribbean Beach, too big. We went there. It was fine, but I wouldn't want to stay. So that one was knocked right out of the list. Coronado Springs was one that I had looked at years ago because it's very beautiful, but it feels far too adult. It feels very grown up. And even though my kids are older, it just, there's too much of like an adult vibe going on there. And also I think that, and this might be part of Steve's X factor he was looking at, the conferences that are held there, I feel like it's going to have a vibe, like a very adult and sort of work vibe. And I don't want that when I go to Disney. So that's out of there. And I've mentioned before, Fort Wilderness is also knocked out just because we do too much of that theme in our other vacations when we go camping into Great Wolf Lodge. And so, no, that one's not working. So that leaves just Port Orleans. And Riverside is also large and has multiple bus stops. And I tried to research people's strategies for like working around that. And my head, it just didn't comprehend it. And so I looked at French Quarter as well. I love the theming. It's much smaller with a single bus stop, although I did hear sometimes it shares, which could be problematic when we are late risers, but it really kind of checks everything off of our list with the exception of walking distance to a park and multiple modes of transportation. I'm not counting the boat to Disney Springs because I want multiple modes of transportation to a park, but I added it to the list just to see how it would compare to the others. And I thought, well, okay, I've walked away with just one additional place to consider. I'll throw Art of Animation on there too. Why not? I know it's not going to rate high for activities, but I'll price a family suite and see what it looks like. And then also I was going to look at Boardwalk Inn because it was the surprising winner when we talked last about DVC points. So I also kind of added that into my decision matrix and took a look at where they all came out. And French Quarter was top overall. Art of Animation, the suites are too expensive as it turned out, especially for what they are. So that made it, plus with the being a repeat place, we know that pool, that kind of knocked it off. And as it turned out, Boardwalk Inn, I don't know why when I started by saying I wasn't looking at anything above a moderate. So obviously that one also fell off the list. So French Quarter was the only contender left after all of this research.
That'd be fun. And then there are Mickey beignets there. Just saying.
Yep. Yeah. The food vibe looks great overall there. So I'm happy with it being on my list. And when the calculations ran along with the DVC properties that were already on there, French Quarter did come out as the leader, but only by 1 point. And I think that was because of the cost. I couldn't use real prices yet because my dates are too far out. And also it hasn't reopened to even fake some dates. So I just had to use what historically they have been. So really Boardwalk renting DVC points was in second place. And the only thing holding it back was the cost. So I really have to think about what we're getting for that money and if it's worth it, how much time we are spending there. It gives me some things to think about, but those are my two leaders now. So what did you look at when you were considering hotels this time?
Okay, first of all, I tried with Good Neighbor Hotels. I really tried. I tried to do some research. I tried to run some numbers. As we've said in previous episodes, we've always stayed in the Disney bubble. But I had heard so many people say that there are these non-Disney options that are basically right on property anyway, that have better accommodations and better prices. And so I was like, okay, I need to do my due diligence. I need to check them out. I found a few problems along the way. I found that, first of all, it's just really hard to dig through Good Neighbor Hotels. It's way more complicated than looking at just regular Disney resorts because you can't see like big historical data on cost or seasons or things like that. There's not a good apples to apples comparison against the Disney resorts. And it was also just tricky for me to look at a map and figure out which ones were both closest and also had those good neighbor perks to them. So that was all just very complicated for me. I also found when I did look at the map and kind of cross-reference that with the other information that I had, there are very few of the Good Neighbor hotels that are walking distance to anything, whether that be Disney Springs or something else. So that kind of knocked them off the list before they even got on it. And then the last issue that I found was that I'm just not seeing how we're going to get a better value at them when they're still up there in price. And then you have the whole transportation issue where you're relying on shuttles that I just don't know how good the shuttle service to the parks is going to be. And that would again take even more digging to figure that out. So I feel like they might be a good option for folks who have a car on property, but that's not how we have typically traveled in the past. And I don't know that that's something that we want to be doing this trip either. So it's just not feeling like a good fit for our family. And on top of that, we're planning on traveling in early to mid-December when in the past Disney has offered some good discounts or free dining. So there are already some good options on property that are better than rack rates. I think we're staying in the bubble, I guess. I tried.
It's good that you tried. It makes perfect sense to me because I prefer the bubble also, for even when the perks sometimes seem to wane a little bit as they have over this last year, it's still being right in there. Nothing really compares to it. And that's sort of worth the extra that you may pay to stay on property.
That's how I feel about it too. So I think if we had a car, if we maybe had a whole bunch of points to burn with one of those hotel chains, then it could certainly be worth it. But that's just not the situation for our group this coming trip. So if anyone has thoughts on that they'd like to share down in the comments, I would love to hear them because I'm just not seeing it for our family this trip. So I'm open to being proven wrong, I guess. Okay, so then I wish Art of Animation were a contender for us just because the theming is so fun. I think that our 5-year-old would really enjoy that. But our whole group of 4 adults and 1 child isn't going to fit in a family suite. And that's really the main draw that I see for that resort. And it's the same issue with Fort Wilderness cabins. We couldn't comfortably fit all in a cabin. It's really, I think both of those types of rooms are set up for families where you have 2 parents and more than 1 child, right? It's meant for multiple kids as opposed to extra adults. So those aren't going to be a great fit for us. I don't love Caribbean Beach. I have stayed there on 1 trip in the past. I'm just not a huge fan of that resort. And I agree with you on Coronado Springs feeling too grown up, too conferencey. They also don't have bathtubs in the room, and we still have a small enough kid that that's a factor for us. So I'd like to try it some trip. It's not going to be this one when we have a 5-year-old along with us. So maybe when he's older, or maybe on a trip where it's just adults or something like that. So that leaves for us Pop Century, which we haven't stayed at before. My parents have, but we have not. And Port Orleans, where our old standby is Riverside. We stayed there for many, many trips. So it's kind of between those 2 for non-DVC options. I found, looking at historical numbers, Port Orleans is a good $100 or more per room per night over Pop. So that's not nothing when we're getting 2 rooms for our group.
And especially for a week or as many days as you can squeeze. Yeah.
As many days as I can possibly get. Yeah. And then of course, Port Orleans only has bus transportation. We haven't found the multiple bus stops to be a huge issue, but I also think that might be because that's just what I knew growing up. So I don't know. It wasn't a huge problem. But it is only the bus. That being said, we tried the Skyliner last trip just for a loop around to try it since it was brand new. And our son loved it. My husband and I hated it. We absolutely hated it. It made us uncomfortable. And so I wonder, is that even a point in Pop's favor if we don't like that mode of transportation? And that's how you're getting to 2 of the parks. I don't know. So that's going to be something to consider moving forward. I do love the refurbished rooms at Pop though. And the biggest thing for me is that there are doors for the sink and the mirror, like the getting ready area. And so many other rooms, it's just a curtain or it's wide open. And I'm someone where I wake up really early and I get ready before I wake up the rest of them. And because, I like to like have my hair done and put on some makeup. And so I'll get up early and do that. And it's really hard to do that when you have a light that's just shining into the rest of the room. So the fact that there is a door there is a huge draw for me. But all that being said, we love the vibe at Port Orleans. It's very relaxing. It's just a chill resort. We like the big food court there. We like the piano bar. That's a lot of fun. We haven't had the Mickey beignets because we didn't know they were there somehow because we've always been at Riverside. So we need to get over there and try them. So I feel like it's kind of a toss up between Pop and Port Orleans in terms of if we did go the non-DVC route this trip.
Well, I'm so far out from my dates that a lot of these things might change a little bit by the time we get closer. And I had mentioned this before, having some reservations with renting DVC points 11 months in advance, because I'm so used to just getting the package all at once and having Disney do it for me and not having to worry. And I was nervous about the future of park reservations. If I book a week and I have tickets and then I have to reserve a park, and what if the one I want isn't available? But I realized that as a person, when it comes to these things, I do it as soon as the window opens. So I'll probably be okay. Like my alarm is set. I have all my tabs open when it's time to do advanced dining reservations and fast pass. It's just me and a cup of coffee at 6 a.m. So if I have to do park reservations, I'll be okay. The nerves still rest a little bit in me, but I think I will manage. And I'm kind of hoping that that goes away because it's one more thing that I have to consider in booking the trip and the days and what we're going to do each day. And, over the span of that week we try to spend at Disney, the day that you're at each park really matters.
It's a lot of extra planning. I am concerned that it's going to be here to stay because there have been rumblings that it's here to stay. So I guess we'll just see going forward. And like you say, you and I are enough of planners. We'll be up, we'll get our park reservations, and it'll be okay.
So I haven't decided if I'm doing point rental or not yet, but I will keep you updated as I continue to figure that out. But I'm glad that I have some leaders now, and I really liked thinking through this and using that decision matrix tool because I don't know if I would have realized how good of a fit Boardwalk could potentially be for us. And so I'm excited that I got that out of it. So I have my leaders. I think it's going to be between Boardwalk and French Quarter.
That's really exciting. I think we're going to have to make a decision as a larger group in terms of whether or not we're renting DVC points. And then since it's through a family member, we'll just have to see what's available and how that fits in with all of our other factors. So we'll certainly do a follow-up episode when we get a little closer to our dates and let folks know what we wound up choosing. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let us know in the comments which moderate or value resort is your favorite. Have you found any good deals with minimal hassle off property? Let us know. And if you'd like to hear more about our Disney plans, be sure to subscribe. Bye.
Bye.